Welcome to today's video. In this story, we'll follow the journey of an old but powerful wandering wizard, a wise traveler who roams the ancient forests in search of rare herbs, hidden runes, and the secrets of the world, helping those in need along the way. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the tale. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more adventures. Keeper of the Forgotten Paths. The forest whispered when he walked, not in words most could hear, of course, but in the rustle of leaves and the creak of boughs bending toward him. The old wizard listened to every syllable. His name was Alfred Willowcloak, though in most villages, children simply called him Grandfather Hat. His pointed cap was tall and patched with dozens of odd stitches, and his cloak trailed long enough to sweep moss and dew from the stones behind him. He leaned on a staff carved from black wood, runes etched deep along its length, glowing faintly when the dusk grew heavy. Alfred was no longer young. His back stooped, his beard ran long and silver, and his hands trembled when the cold caught him by surprise. Yet his eyes, bright as a river at sunrise, carried the weight of years and the curiosity of a boy. He did not hunt riches or kingdoms. His quests were humbler, though no less strange. To collect rare herbs that grew only under moonlight, to study moss that glowed faint green in old ruins, and to listen to the voices of creatures that others thought dumb. That morning, as sunbeams filtered through high branches, Alfred bent to inspect a violet sprout curling through a bed of stones. He murmured to it in a tongue that was older than the trees themselves. The little sprout trembled, then opened its petals wide. "Thank you," Alfred whispered, tucking the flower gently into a pouch at his side. "Moon bell root. You'll help heal fevers, won't you? I'll need you before long." A raven circled down to land on his staff. It cawed loudly, cocking its head at him. "Yes, I know, my friend," Alfred chuckled. "You smell bread, don't you? Let us walk. There is a village nearby, and perhaps they'll share their loaves with a tired old wanderer." The path wound on, and as Alfred walked, the air shifted. The breeze carried the sound of hurried footsteps, shouts, and then a scream. The wizard frowned and quickened his pace. Through the trees, he saw smoke rising, not from a cooking fire but from panic. When he reached the clearing, he found a small village of stone and timber, its people rushing to and fro. A young girl cried beside a toppled cart, pointing toward the hillside. "There, it took him. The beast took my brother." Alfred knelt beside her, lowering his hood so she could see his face. "Hush now. What beast?" Her lip quivered. A great boar, bigger than any I've ever seen. Its eyes burned red, and it came from the woods like fire. My brother chased it, and now he's gone." The villagers gathered around, some muttering about curses, others clutching pitchforks. Alfred raised his staff. The runes glimmered faintly, and the crowd hushed. "I will look for this child," he said simply. "But no mob with sharp sticks will make the beast kinder. Let the old man go first." The trail of the boar was not difficult to follow. Trees lay snapped, the earth torn where hooves gouged it deep. Alfred walked slowly, letting the forest speak. He brushed his fingers along broken branches, and they whispered of rage. He touched the soil where hoofprints sank, and the ground rumbled of sorrow. "It is no curse," the wizard muttered to himself. "Something drives the beast." The raven croaked from above. Alfred glanced up. Yes, I feel it too. The air tastes wrong, like smoke but not from fire." Deeper he went, until the light dimmed beneath the heavy canopy. There, in a hollow between roots, he found a boy, unhurt but trembling. And just beyond, the boar stood, its tusks as long as a man's arm, its back bristling with coarse hair. Its eyes glowed faintly red, not from malice but from pain. A thorn vine twisted cruelly around its flank, sunk deep into flesh that would not heal. The beast snorted pawing the ground, ready to charge. The boy whimpered. Alfred raised his staff, but not as a weapon. "Easy, old one," he murmured in the language of beasts. The boar froze, startled by hearing its own tongue. "You hurt, don't you? And pain makes you blind with rage. Let me help." The boar snarled, shaking its head. The thorn vine seemed alive, writhing tighter. Alfred narrowed his eyes. Not natural. Someone planted this cruelty. He tapped his staff against the ground, and the runes burned blue. The vine shrieked. Yes, shrieked, and writhed before snapping free, falling black into the earth. The boar staggered, then lowered its head, exhausted. Its eyes softened, no longer burning. It nudged the boy gently, almost apologetic. "There, there," Alfred said. He placed a hand on its coarse hide. "Go home, friend. Find your den. Leave the children in peace." With a grunt, the beast lumbered away. The boy rushed into the wizard's cloak, sobbing. "Thank you," he gasped. "Don't thank me," Alfred said softly. "Thank the forest for forgiving us once more." But as he watched the blackened vine twitch one last time before turning to ash, he frowned. This was no accident. Something darker stirs. That night, the villagers held a feast in Alfred's honor. They gave him bread warm from the oven, goat cheese wrapped in leaves, and spice cider that smelled of apples. The old wizard ate with quiet thanks, but his mind remained troubled. The elder of the village leaned close. "Will you stay, wise one? You could protect us." Alfred shook his head. "I cannot guard one village while the sickness spreads. I must find a route." At dawn, with his pack heavy with herbs and gifts from the grateful folk, Alfred set off again. The raven circled above, and the forest wind seemed to sigh with him. For 3 days he walked, stopping to heal where he could. He mended a farmer's withered apple tree with moonbell root. He helped a shepherd find lost lambs by asking the hills where the little hooves had passed. He even taught children to whistle with reeds, and they followed him for half a day before their mothers called them home. But always, the thorn vine haunted his thoughts. On the 4th day, he found it again, not in the flesh of a beast, but climbing the ruins of a fallen watchtower. Black, coiling vines that bled when cut, and runes carved into the stones beneath them. Alfred leaned heavily on his staff, staring. "These runes are not of kindness," he murmured. "They bind, they twist, they take what is natural and make it cruel. Old magic, meant to turn the forest against itself." The raven croaked angrily. "Yes," Alfred agreed. "I smell it too. Someone is sowing this evil. And if I do not follow the trail, it will spread across every glade and hill." The wind rose then, carrying with it a low whisper only the wizard could hear. The trees bent, their branches pointing eastward, deeper into lands no villager dared walk. Alfred pulled his cloak tight, set his hat firm, and tapped his staff to the earth. "Very well," he said to the forest. "Guide me, and I will walk where you need me." And so the old wizard and his raven companion stepped into the darker green, where secrets lay waiting. The eastward path was long and winding, and Alfred knew better than to hurry the forest. The sun had climbed high, spilling warm light through the canopy, when his stomach gave a deep, impatient rumble. "Ah," he laughed, patting his belly. "The forest guides my feet, but it does nothing for my hunger." He found a mossy stump near a brook and settled there, untying the leather satchel at his side. From within, he drew a small loaf of bread, a wedge of goat cheese, and a packet of dried berries. The raven hopped down to his shoulder and gave a demanding caw. "Yes, yes, you'll have your share," Alfred said, breaking off a piece of bread. "But mind you don't steal the cheese again, feather thief." As he began to eat, a tiny nose twitched in the undergrowth. A brown rat, bold and curious, crept closer, its eyes fixed on the crumbs that fell to the ground. Behind it, A squirrel scrambled down a trunk, flicking its tail nervously, while a round-bellied hedgehog waddled out of the grass, sniffing with great determination. Alfred chuckled, tearing his bread into smaller pieces. Well then, it seems I'm not alone at table today. He scattered crumbs and berries on the moss. The rat darted in first, stuffing its cheeks before scurrying back a few steps to chew. The squirrel grabbed a berry almost too large for its mouth and scrambled up the stump to sit near him, while the hedgehog, slower but persistent, claimed a few crumbs and munched loudly, eyes half shut in delight. The wizard ate with them, sipping cool water from the brook. For a while, there was no mystery, no darkness, only the quiet joy of shared food and the warmth of the sun. He even hummed a tune, a silly old song about a shepherd who tried to milk a goat that turned into a bear. "See," he said to the raven, "even the smallest creatures make fine company. Never dine alone if you can help it." When the bread was gone and the last crumbs vanished into the hedgehog's belly, Alfred stood, brushing moss from his cloak. The animals lingered, the squirrel chattering as if to bid him farewell. "Thank you, friends," the wizard said, bowing slightly. "May your bellies stay full and your nights be safe." The forest seemed brighter after that meal. His staff clicked steadily against the stones as he walked on, the raven circling above. Yet the light shifted as the day wore on, the trees growing taller and the air heavier, carrying a faint, acrid tang. Alfred tightened his grip on the staff. The vines would not be far. By evening, Alfred reached a hollow where the forest floor sank into a bowl of shadow. In the center rose a mound of stone, overgrown with the same blackened vines he had seen before. But this time, the vines were thicker, pulsing faintly as if they carried blood. The wizard approached slowly, muttering words of warding. His runes glowed pale silver, pushing back the dark air. At the base of the mound, he found a broken stone door half buried in earth. Strange sigils covered it, not of the forest language, but something older, something meant to chain. "This is not your place, old one," whispered a voice. It slithered from the vines, low and mocking. Alfred struck his staff against the ground. "And yet, here I stand." The vines writhed, curling like serpents. From the shadows, shapes formed, beasts twisted by the corruption. A fox with too many eyes, a stag whose antlers dripped black sap. They stalked forward, their movements jerky and unnatural. Alfred sighed deeply, his back cracking as he straightened. I had hoped for another quiet evening. With a flick of his staff, light burst outward, not blinding but clear, like moonlight in deepest night. The fox hissed and fell back. The stag bellowed, its antlers splintering to dust. The vines recoiled, yet the door did not open. The runes on its surface glowed red, resisting his power. He placed his palm upon it, closing his eyes. "Tell me your story," he whispered. The stone was cold, but within it he heard whispers. Once this was a watchtower of the First Age, where druids guarded the balance of land and beast. When they fell, others came, sorcerers who twisted what they could not control. They bound the forest's anger here, locking it beneath stone, feeding it on pain and blood until it warped into the vine he now faced. Alfred's eyes snapped open. "So that is your secret, not a curse born of chance, but of cruelty long buried." The raven shrieked, wings flaring. The vines surged suddenly, trying to engulf him, but Alfred struck his staff thrice, each strike sending ripples of silver fire across the ground. The vines hissed and withdrew, though the runes still pulsed angrily. "This lock is old," Alfred muttered, sweat on his brow. "And one man's staff is not enough to break it." He sank to the ground, tired, leaning back against the mound. The night pressed in, and the vines rustled faintly, almost laughing. Alfred woke at dawn to the rustle of paws. When his eyes opened, he was not alone. Around the mound stood wolves, not twisted beasts, but great, silver-furred guardians, their eyes bright and knowing. They did not growl or bare teeth. Instead, they circled him with curiosity, as if weighing his heart. The raven croaked nervously, but Alfred raised a hand. "Peace. They are not foes." One of the wolves, larger than the rest, stepped forward. Its fur shimmered faintly as the dawn light touched it, and in its eyes Alfred saw wisdom deeper than many men could boast. The beast lowered its head, brushing its muzzle against his staff. "You feel it too, don't you?" the wizard asked softly. "The wound at the heart of the world." The wolf gave a low, mournful growl. The others echoed, a chorus that rolled through the trees like thunder. Alfred's heart stirred. The forest had not abandoned him. He stood slowly, brushing dust from his cloak. "Then let us face this darkness together. If the door is to be opened, if the vines are to be undone, I will need more than my runes. I will need the strength of the forest itself." The wolves fanned out, noses to the ground, sniffing the edges of the mound. They paused where the vines grew thickest, clawing at the earth, exposing faint lines of stone buried beneath the roots. Alfred bent close, tracing the carvings there. A puzzle, a seal built of shifting patterns, designed to be solved not with brute force, but with harmony. He placed his staff into the central groove. The wolves lowered their heads, pressing paws against the runes, lending their wild energy. The raven perched atop the staff, wings spread wide. Together, man and beast, they poured their will into the seal. The red glow flickered, turned orange, then cracked faintly. The vines shrieked, lashing out wildly, but the wolves snapped their jaws, tearing them back. Alfred whispered the words of unbinding, his voice trembling but resolute. At last, the door gave a long, echoing groan. A line split down its center, and cold air spilled out. Not the breath of corruption, but the musty scent of ancient stone, dust, and forgotten truth. The wizard leaned on his staff, sweat dripping down his brow. "So be it. The story buried here will be told again." The wolves stood beside him, silent and watchful, as the darkness within the mound beckoned. Here's a reimagined continuation that breaks away from the last story structure. Alfred did not step into a ruin. Instead, the forest itself guided him elsewhere. The wolves, now clearly his companions, walked with purpose, their paws leaving no prints on the moss. They led him toward a valley none had spoken of in centuries. As the land sloped downward, Alfred noticed the trees changing. Their bark glistened like polished stone, their leaves humming faintly when the wind passed through them. Flowers of silver blue bloomed at their bases, and when he bent to touch one, it gave off warmth like holding a cup of tea. "Ah," he breathed. "You sing, don't you?" The wolf leader growled softly, as if in agreement. In the heart of the valley lay not a dungeon nor a tower, but a great glade. At its center rose a pool of clear water, perfectly still, reflecting the sky. Around it stood stone pillars, broken and half swallowed by moss, etched with runes far older than his own staff. This place was not corrupted. It was waiting. Alfred knelt by the pool, dipping his fingers into the water. Ripples spread, and in them he saw not his face, but fleeting visions, a deer running, a storm breaking, a child born under a silver moon. It was as though the water remembered the world and showed him pieces of its memory. The raven gave a sharp cry and took flight. The wolves tensed, ears forward. Alfred looked up just as the reflection shifted again, this time showing not a memory, but something approaching. "Visitors," he murmured, "and not the gentle kind." From a far side of the glade, shapes emerged. At first Alfred thought them men, cloaked in black. But as they drew near, their forms wavered like smoke. Their faces were not faces at all, but masks of shifting shadow, their limbs too long, their steps too silent. The wolves snarled, forming a half-circle before the wizard. The ravens circled overhead, shrieking its alarm. Alfred rose, gripping his staff. "Specters," he muttered. "Not bound to death, not bound to life. Guardians cast adrift." The nearest shadow figure extended a hand, not in peace, but in demand. Its voice slid into the glade like cold oil. "The pool is not for you, old one. Leave it, or be unmade." Alfred's eyes narrowed. "This place remembers. It sings still, even after your silence. Why should I leave it to you, who have no voices?" The shadows hissed. One lunged, its smoky arm stretching like a whip. Alfred struck his staff upon the ground. From the runes etched in the mossy pillars, light erupted, weaving into a dome of silver over the pool. The strike repelled the specter, though the effort sent pain through his chest. The wolves charged, snapping at the shadows, their teeth catching wisps of darkness that smoked and vanished under their bite. Still, there were many, too many. Alfred whispered quickly to the pool, show me what they fear." His palm touched the water. A vision flared. A tree, vast as mountains, with roots spreading across the earth and branches touching the stars. And woven into it, the same specters, once whole, once living. Druids. Alfred's breath caught. "You are the fallen wardens," he said, turning to the shadows. "This is your place, you abandoned it, and in doing so, abandoned yourselves." The shadows froze at his words, their shapes flickering, faltering. For a moment, silence stretched. Then the leader shrieked, a sound like shattering glass, and they rushed all at once. The glade became chaos. The wolves leapt and tore through the tide of shadow, the raven dove like a dart, striking with its beak. Alfred held his ground, his staff glowing so brightly it left streaks in the air. But he knew light alone would not end them. They were bound not by malice, but by memory, by loss. So he did what few wizards would dare. He lowered his staff. "Enough!" His voice boomed, carried by the runes and the pillars. "You are not enemies. You are echoes. You seek what you once were." The shadows halted, swirling uncertainly. Alfred raised his hands, palms open. "The pool holds what you have forgotten. Come, look. Remember." One shadow drifted to the water, its form trembling. It touched the surface with a finger of smoke. In an instant, light rippled across its form, and for a heartbeat, the figure of a man appeared, hair braided, cloak of leaves, staff of carved oak. Then he was gone, dissolved into the water. The others wavered. One by one, they approached, touched the pool, and vanished. Each time, a glimpse of the druids they had been flickered, then melted into memory. When the last had gone, silence returned. The pool stilled. Only Alfred, the wolves, and the raven remained. The wizard sank to his knees, exhausted. So that is the truth of this valley. A grave not of bones, but of memory. The wolf leader padded to his side, resting its massive head against his shoulder. The wizard smiled faintly, stroking its fur. "Thank you, friend. Without you, I might have faltered." Above them, the trees of the valley shivered, their leaves ringing like faint chimes, as though the forest itself sighed in relief. Alfred looked out across the glade, the pool reflecting stars though it was still day. "The world remembers," he murmured, "and so must I." The valley felt different now. The stillness was no longer heavy, no longer haunted by shadows. Instead, the glade seemed to breathe, as though a great weight had lifted from its roots. The runes on the moss-covered pillars glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the sound of the leaves high above. Alfred sat on a fallen log, his staff planted beside him, chest rising and falling with the measured breaths of someone who had nearly spent himself. The wolves lay nearby, their fur rising and falling in time with his own. Even the raven perched quietly upon his staff, head cocked, its dark eyes watching him as if weighing his strength. "I have seen many things in my time," Alfred muttered, pulling his cloak tighter. His voice was soft, almost for himself. "But never have I seen grief wear such a shape. To be trapped between what was and what could never be again." He shook his head, staring at the pool. "I free them, yes, but at what cost to myself?" The wolf leader rose, padding silently toward the pool. Its reflection shimmered on the surface, the great beast appearing almost larger, almost more ancient. It lowered its muzzle and drank, and when it lifted its head again, its eyes glowed faintly gold. Alfred blinked, leaning forward. "Ah, so you've drunk the memory too, eh? What did you see, old friend?" The wolf patted back and pressed its massive head against his knee. In that moment, Alfred understood. The wolf had seen the druids, not as shadows, but as companions, guardians of the forest. The bond that had once existed between their kind and the beasts had been broken, and now perhaps it could be mended. The wizard smiled faintly. "So that is why you came to me. Not only to guard me, but to learn again what was lost." The raven cawed, flapping its wings sharply. Alfred turned his gaze to the trees. Beyond the glade, he could feel a pull, a path leading him onward. The forest was not finished with him. He rose slowly, leaning on his staff. "Very well. If there is more to remember, then let us go. The world will not wait forever." The wolves stood, forming a loose procession around him. Together, they left the glade, the memory pool shimmering quietly behind them, as though holding its own vigil. The journey that followed was unlike any Alfred had taken before. The valley's exit led not back into familiar woodland, but into a forest that seemed touched by something greater. The trees were taller than towers, their trunks wide enough to house whole villages. Moss glowed faintly on their roots, and silver streams cut through the undergrowth, their waters cold and sweet. As they walked, Alfred noticed the forest itself responding to his presence. Vines parted gently when he passed. Birds landed close, unafraid. The wind moved with his steps, carrying scents of wild herbs and blooming flowers. Still, he could sense it, a thread of unease running beneath the wonder. There was purpose here, not merely beauty. The forest was guiding him, testing him, and he had lived long enough to know that such things were never without reason. At midday, they reached a wide clearing. The grass swayed like waves, and in its center stood a stone altar, cracked with age, half buried in roots. Strange symbols were etched upon its surface, not druidic, not elven, not of any tongue Alfred knew. He approached slowly, hand outstretched. As his fingers brushed the stone, the runes flared to life. Not with light, but with sound. A low hum vibrated in the air, deep and resonant, like the voice of the earth itself. The wolves paced uneasily, ears back. Even the raven fluffed its feathers and took flight, circling above. Alfred steadied himself. "So, another test, is it?" The hum grew louder, shaking the ground. The cracks in the altar widened, roots tearing free, until the whole slab of stone shifted aside, revealing a dark stair spiraling downward. A faint draft of cold, damp air wafted up. The wizard sighed. Downward again. Why must all roads lead into the dark? Yet he did not hesitate. Staff in hand, he began the descent, the wolves following closely, their paws silent on the ancient steps. The air grew colder with each step, heavy with the smell of earth and stone. The stair ended in a vast underground hall, its ceiling lost in shadow. Pillars carved with forgotten symbols held up the roof, and between them stood rows upon rows of shelves. Books, scrolls, tablets, a library vast beyond imagining. Alfred's breath caught. By the stars, so much knowledge buried, waiting. His hand trembled as he reached for the nearest tome. But before he could touch it, the shadows stirred. Not specters this time, not grief-made flesh, but something different. Shapes slithered along the ceiling, unseen but felt, like whispers pressing against his mind. The wolves growled, teeth bared. Alfred lifted his staff. Of course. Wisdom is never left unguarded. The whispers grew louder, becoming words, though no tongue he had ever learned. They wormed into his thoughts, slippery and insistent, promising power, warning of doom, urging him to leave, urging him to stay. Alfred pressed his palm against the nearest pillar, steadying himself. "Old tricks," he muttered. "I've heard better from apprentices try to lie their way out of chores." He struck the base of his staff upon the floor. Light rippled outward, pushing back the unseen shapes, though they hissed and writhed against it. The wolves barked fiercely, their voices echoing in the cavern, driving the whispers further into the shadows. At last, silence fell. Alfred exhaled slowly and turned to the shelves. His fingers brushed over cracked leather, brittle parchment, and runes carved into stone. He searched not for power, nor secrets of domination, but for something else entirely: truth. It was the wolf leader who found it first. The great beast padded to the farthest shelf, nose pressing against a heavy tome bound in bark and sinew. Its cover bore no title, only the image of a tree, its roots and branches entwined in a circle. Alfred lifted it carefully, the weight surprising even for him. "So, this is what you meant me to find." He opened it, and the air itself seemed to grow still. The first page was not written in ink, but in living script, letters of light, shifting as though alive. Slowly, carefully, Alfred read. "In the beginning, the world was sung into being. The rivers are its breath, the trees its memory, the mountains its bones. To live within it is not to own it, but to remember alongside it. Forget this, and the world will forget you." The wizard's eyes widened, his throat tightening. "The song of creation," he whispered. "I thought it was only a tale told to children." The raven swooped down, landing on his shoulder, peering at the words as though it too could read them. The wolves sat silently, their eyes fixed on the glowing script. Alfred closed the book gently, pressing his hand to its cover. "This is no ordinary text. This is a reminder, a warning, and perhaps the key." The whispers stirred again, softer this time, as though bowing to the truth revealed. Alfred stood straighter, his old bones seeming lighter, his staff glowing faintly. "Then my path is clear. I will not hoard this. I will carry it where it must be carried, and share it with those who still remember how to listen." He looked at his companions. "Wolves, raven, forest, and we will guard it together." The wizard shuffled along the forest road, his wide-brimmed, pointy hat drooping as if it too were tired of the long walk. His staff tapped against the stones, glowing faintly whenever he leaned too hard. The wolves, whom he had befriended weeks earlier, padded silently at his side, their massive frames blending into the twilight shadows. Though his pace seemed meandering, there was purpose in his step. The night before, under a sky swollen with silver light, he had heard the trees whisper of a place long forgotten. The moonlit vale, a hidden glen where the oldest runes of the world still pulsed with quiet power. Few dared to seek it, for it was said the vale tested not strength, but heart. As he walked, he hummed to himself, an off-key tune that made the squirrels peek out of their dens. The old wizard paused mid-hum, bent down, and set a small bundle on a tree stump. Out tumbled a hunk of cheese, 2 apples, and a crust of bread that had seen better days. "Come along, little ones," he said warmly. From the underbrush crept a hedgehog, its tiny nose twitching. A squirrel scampered down a trunk and perched beside it, while a rat, scraggly but bold, scuttled forward. "Don't squabble," the wizard chuckled, breaking the bread into 3 uneven chunks. "Cheese for you, prickly fellow, apples for the quick climber, crumbs for the brave scavenger. Fair's fair, isn't it?" The animals feasted as the wizard leaned back, sighing at the fading sunlight. One of the wolves tilted its massive head, watching the scene with curious yellow eyes. The wizard winked. "Even the smallest companions deserve their share. Besides, I like good company when I eat." With bellies full, the little creatures scurried off, leaving the wizard to pack up. He rose slowly, joints creaking, and adjusted his cloak. "Well then, my friends," he said to the wolves, "let us see if these whispers of a veil lead to supper or to trouble." That night, they camped beneath the towering pines. The forest grew eerily quiet, the kind of silence that carries weight. The wizard poked at the fire and muttered spells into the flames, coaxing sparks to dance like fireflies. He could feel the pull of the veil growing stronger, like an invisible string tugging him onward. Before sleep claimed him, he placed his staff across his lap and whispered to the wolves, "If shadows come, wake me. If the veil calls, follow." Dawn brought mist, heavy and damp, curling through the trees like pale fingers. The wizard pushed his hat back and squinted. Ahead, the forest thickened unnaturally. Vines nodded over the trunks, forming patterns that almost resembled letters. The wolves growled low, uneasy. "Ah," said the wizard, stroking his beard. "So the veil does not reveal itself easily. A puzzle at the gates, perhaps." He shuffled closer, tracing the patterns with his staff. With each touch, the vines shimmered faintly. Words began to form, ancient and curling like roots. "Speak truth or remain lost." The wizard chuckled. "A veil that asks for honesty? Dangerous business. Honesty gets one into far more trouble than lies." He cleared his throat. "Very well. I am old, forgetful, and my hat smells faintly of cabbage." The vines trembled. One retracted. Encouraged, he continued, "I once turned a prince into a goat because he called me a wand waver. Never apologized, mind you. I also sometimes snore so loudly birds relocate their nests." More vines slithered away, revealing a narrow archway of mossy stone. The wolves padded forward, ears flat, but the wizard held up a hand. "Careful now. There's always one more trick." As if on cue, the air before the arch shimmered. A shape formed, a mirror of the wizard himself, except younger, sharper, and far sterner. The reflection spoke in a cold voice. "You wander the world with jokes and bread crusts, but what do you truly seek? Do you even know?" The wizard frowned, his humor momentarily faltering. He stared at the double, then sighed. "Isa moments. Quiet ones, loud ones, strange ones. The world is too wide and too old not to notice the small things. If along the way I help a traveler or share bread with a hedgehog, that is enough." The reflection regarded him, then bowed before dissolving into mist. The archway cleared completely, the path beyond glowing faintly silver. The wolves, now calm, moved beside him. "See," the wizard muttered, stepping forward. "Even riddles respect a good lunch and an honest beard." They entered the moonlit vale. The vale was unlike any place the wizard had ever seen. Ancient trees stood in perfect circles, their branches glowing softly with threads of light. A river of crystal water flowed silently, reflecting the sky in colors that did not belong to the world outside. The wolves prowled cautiously, but their eyes shone with wonder. At the center of the glen stood a pedestal of stone, entwined with roots thicker than a man's arm. Resting atop, it was a book, massive, bound in bark and leaf, pulsing faintly as if it breathed. The wizard approached slowly, reverently. "This," he whispered, "is no ordinary tome. It is the memory of the world." He stretched out a hand, and the book opened on its own, pages fluttering without wind. Symbols glowed, runes shifting into images. He saw the first rivers carving the land, the mountains rising, the stars being named by voices long forgotten. He saw harmony between beasts and people, broken and mended across ages. The wolves whined softly, sensing the weight of it all. The wizard placed his hand on the page. "So," he soothed, "the world speaks, but gently. Listen." And then a warning etched itself into the glowing letters. "He who takes without care shall bind the veil forever." The wizard stepped back, heart pounding. This was no mere treasure. This was responsibility. A silly old man with crumbs in his beard had no business claiming it. Yet, wasn't that why he was here? To notice, to witness, to remember? He bowed to the book. "I will not take you. I will carry your memory instead. Words need not live on paper if they live in a heart." The book closed with a soft thrum. The wolves howled, low and mournful, as if marking a vow. Suddenly, the veil trembled. The pedestal sank, the river roared, and vines lashed outward. The wizard tightened his grip on his staff. There's always a price for peeking at secrets. The path behind them sealed with roots. The veil would not let them leave so easily. The earth groaned as if the very roots of the world had awakened in protest. The wizard clutched his staff, his knuckles white beneath his weathered skin. The wolves at his side bared their teeth, hackles raised, as vines thicker than serpents began to writhe across the glowing clearing. The pedestal that had held the book of roots sank into the soil, swallowed whole by the veil itself. The air shimmered with silver and green light, dazzling and oppressive. The wizard's hat nearly slipped from his head as he stumbled back, muttering, "Well, this is inconvenient." One moment of honesty, and suddenly the forest throws a tantrum. But beneath the jest, he felt the weight of truth. The veil was not simply collapsing, it was testing. The warning etched in the book had not been idle. To glimpse the secrets of a world without reverence, to seek without care, was to invite eternal imprisonment within the roots of the veil. The first trap revealed itself swiftly. A circle of roots rose around them, weaving into a high wall like bars of a living cage. Moss glowed on its surface, runes flickering faintly as though waiting for a key. The wolves growled low, pacing, their massive frames tense. The wizard tapped the runes with his staff. Symbols of truth and falsehood. A liar's snare. He scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Oh, I do dislike when puzzles expect me to be serious." The runes shifted into riddles, each glowing with eerie light. "Speak what is false, and the way is lost. Speak what is true, and the roots shall part." The wizard sighed. "Truth again? Haven't I been honest enough today? Very well." He placed his hand against the nearest rune. "I am no hero. I prefer naps to glory, bread crust to banquets. And if my hat smells of cabbage, well, it is because I sometimes use it as a cooking pot." The runes flared bright, and a section of the root wall slithered open. The wolves pressed forward, but more walls sprouted in their path, forming a labyrinth that twisted and shifted like a living beast. "Well," the wizard muttered, adjusting his cloak, "at least it keeps me walking. Wouldn't want my joints to stiffen." They pressed on. The labyrinth closed behind them, each step echoing with the hum of the veil's ancient power. Shadows darted through the mist, shapes that looked like forgotten beasts, eyes burning with pale light. The wolves bristled, but the wizard held up his hand. "Phantoms," he whispered, "guardians of memory. They cannot harm us unless we believe they can." One wolf snarled and lunged at a phantom stag that charged from the fog, its antlers made of flame. The wizard raised his staff and shouted, "Enough!" His voice cracked like thunder, and the illusion shattered, dissolving into sparks that rained harmlessly to the mossy ground. "See," he muttered, "all bark, no bite. Like me on a bad day." Yet even as he joked, the wizard knew the danger was real. The veil's tests were not meant to kill outright. They were meant to break the spirit, and that was far more dangerous. After hours that felt like days, the wizard and his companions emerged into a vast cavern at the heart of the veil. It was no natural hollow. Its walls were polished like mirrors, reflecting the wizard and the wolves 1,000-fold. At its center stood a pool of water, glowing faintly. The reflections shimmered strangely. The wizard saw not his own wrinkled face, but dozens of versions of himself, tall and proud, young and fiery, broken and weary. In one mirror, he was a tyrant, staff dripping with blood. In another, he was a fool, wandering without purpose until the end of his days. The wolves growled uneasily, their reflections twisting into monstrous beasts with eyes like burning suns. The pool spoke, its voice deep and resonant. "To leave this place, you must face the truth of what you could have been." The wizard's throat tightened. He shuffled forward, staring at the reflections. For the first time in many years, his humor failed him. He saw the weight of choices he had never made, the apprentices he might have trained, the kingdoms he might have saved, the darkness he might have embraced. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly. "I am none of these," he said softly. "I am not the tyrant, nor the savior, nor the fool. I am simply myself. A silly old man who listens to squirrels and shares cheese with hedgehogs. And that is enough." The mirror shuddered. One by one, the false images cracked and shattered, leaving only his true reflection, wrinkled, weary, but smiling faintly beneath the brim of his hat. The pool's glow dimmed, and a path of stone emerged across its surface, leading to another archway. The wolves padded across with him, their monstrous reflections fading back into noble forms. Beyond the chamber, the path narrowed into a tunnel lined with roots that pulsed like veins. The air grew heavy, each breath thick with the scent of earth and age. Suddenly, the roots lashed out, forming a barrier. From the shadows, a voice spoke. "Why do you seek our secrets, wanderer?" The wizard gripped his staff. "I do not seek to take, only to witness, to remember, and perhaps to share with those who have forgotten wonder." The voice rumbled with disapproval. "Many have said the same. Few have kept their word." The roots writhed, forming a giant maw that yawned before him. The wolves snarled, stepping forward to protect him, but the wizard raised his staff. "No, my friends, this is my test." He walked straight into the maw. The roots closed around him, darkness swallowing his sight. He felt the weight of the veil pressing in, testing his heart, his spirit, his very being. Memories flooded him. Every failure, every mistake, every time he had chosen laughter over responsibility. Faces of those he had helped, and those he had failed, swirled before him. His knees buckled, but he planted his staff and spoke into the darkness. "Yes, I am flawed. Yes, I am foolish. But my flaws are mine. My foolishness is kindness in disguise. And if the world needs a keeper of secrets, let it be one who finds joy in sharing bread with rats rather than hoarding power." The darkness shuddered. The roots quivered and then receded, spitting him out on his solid ground. The wolves rushed to his side, licking his hands as if to remind him he was not alone. The voice whispered once more, softer this time, "Then you are worthy." The veil began to collapse in earnest now. Trees cracked, rivers surged, and the sky above split with blinding light. The wizard staggered forward, the wolves flanking him, as the ground opened into jagged chasms. A bridge of roots stretched across the final gorge, but it trembled violently, breaking apart with every step. The wolves crossed first, their massive frames leaping with grace. The wizard followed, his cloak whipping in the violent wind. Halfway across, the bridge snapped. The wizard tumbled, his staff slipping from his grasp. For a moment, he hung in the air, staring at the abyss below. Then, with a howl, the largest wolf lunged back, seizing his cloak in its jaws. The wizard dangled helplessly, sputtering, "Mind a fabric. It's the only cloak I have." With immense effort, the wolves hauled him back to solid ground. He collapsed, gasping, then burst into laughter. Saved by wolves. I'll never hear the end of it. Together, they stumbled through the final archway as the veil collapsed behind them. They emerged into open air, the sun just beginning to rise. The veil was gone, sealed once more, hidden from the world. Only the memory remained, the images etched into the wizard's mind, and the bond between him and the wolves that had grown unbreakable. He sat on a rock, catching his breath, and pulled a loaf of bread from his satchel. "Well," he said, breaking it into chunks, "I suppose we've earned breakfast." The wolves sat beside him, their golden eyes soft in the morning light. The wizard gazed out at the horizon, smiling faintly. "The world is strange, my friends. Strange and full of secrets. But so long as I walk it with laughter and you walk it with me, I think I'll be just fine." And with that, he set off once more, staff in hand, hat askew, cloak flapping in the wind, toward whatever adventure awaited him next. The end. And so, the old wizard continues his journey, wandering deeper into the ancient woods, guided by the whispers of the wind and the songs of the trees. His path is endless, and his story far from over. If you enjoyed this tale, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next adventure. Until then, traveler, safe journeys.